Multi-source reasoning questions on the GMAT are overwhelming in more than one way. A large volume of information, emotional frustration arising from the long solutioning time, and GMAT's partial credit rule come together to create the challenge of this question type. In the next 8 minutes, I will talk about my observations about multi-source reasoning questions, which will help you perform better on these questions. In addition, I will also share some learnings about data sufficiency questions.
This is day 22 of my GMAT Prep. On day 21, I went through some data sufficiency questions. Today, I'm planning to focus on the multi-source reasoning question type. I will refer to multi-source reasoning questions as MSR questions just for brevity. If you have been following me, you know that I'm running behind my intended study plan by a few days. However, that is not because of a lack of effort. From my perspective, the reason I'm running behind is just because when I started preparing for the data insights section, I did not know what to expect with the MSR questions in particular. I expected to be able to solve 20 questions per 45 minutes. However, through the couple of practice sets that I have attempted, I have only been able to solve 10 questions every 45 minutes. Part of it might be because I have been optimizing for accuracy, but I'm 100% sure that a large part of it is because MSR questions are designed to take slightly longer than other question types on the data insights section. Obviously, when you're making a study plan, you cannot incorporate things that you do not know yet. The best you can do is adjust your plans once you discover the things that you did not know of before. So that is exactly what I plan to do tomorrow when I will tweak my study plan a little bit, specifically focusing on the data insights section. For now, the plan is clear. I will jump straight into a couple of practice sets for the MSR question type. Alright, so I have spent about 80 minutes at this point on the multi-source reasoning practice set for the day. First, I took about 48 minutes to solve 9 MSR questions. I answered 7 of those questions correctly and 2 incorrectly. Let me just quickly scroll through what my performance metrics look like so you know what I'm talking about. As you can see, the questions that I answered incorrectly were of medium and hard difficulty respectively. The medium question had 3 statements asking me to indicate if each of those 3 statements was supported by the information provided in the tabs. Unfortunately, my selection against one of those 3 statements was incorrect. Because of the no partial credit rule, I actually lost credit for the entire question as a result. Going back quickly to the notes for this question, the error was a result of me picking the wrong information from the tabs. This MSR question contained a tab which had a table with 10 or so names along with values mentioned against each. Some of those names read and sounded very similar. The particular sub-question I was solving required me to pick values against 3 names listed in that table. I made an error in picking the value listed against one of those 3 names because that table consisted other names that sounded very similar to that particular name. I understand that this is a trivial error and it is easy for me to say that I will try and avoid it by being a little more self-aware going forward. However, the problem is, as I introspected about why I made this error, I realized that I was beginning to get a little frustrated by the time I got to this question. The reason I keep getting emotionally frustrated is because MSR questions are constantly taking me longer to solve than I think they should. I will talk about the corrective action I intend to take, but first let me talk about the other question that I answered incorrectly. This is a question that the online question bank identifies as being of hard difficulty. This hard question also consisted of 3 statements, and I was asked to indicate yes or no against each, depending on whether the statement explained the information which was provided in the tabs associated with the MSR question set. Once again, while I answered 2 of those 3 statements correctly, I lost credit on this question entirely because of the no partial credit rule on MSR questions. My mistake in case of this particular statement was not making the logical connection between economic concepts that are related. I don't want to get into where those concepts are because that will spoil the question for you. The lesson for me is that I should not be afraid to apply logical relationships that are obvious when answering MSR questions. The reason I had an element of doubt in my mind on this particular statement was because the 2 concepts it required me to relate required me to make some kind of assumption that was not stated obviously in the question. To be honest, I genuinely find this to be a hard one, and I do not know if I will be able to answer a question like this correctly if I were to encounter it again on the GMAT. Let's talk about the topic of emotional frustration a little bit. Overall, one of the things I'm realizing with the MSR question type is that almost all the problems are actually very involved. As I was mentioning earlier, and as must be obvious to you from the amount of time I'm taking to solve these questions, I continue to struggle with pacing on the MSR question type. Consistently, across the last 3 problem sets, I have only been able to solve through 9 to 10 questions over a period of 45 to 50 minutes. The other thing I noticed is that these questions tend to read a little bit like the reading comprehension question type on the verbal section of the GMAT. They also require you to retain a bunch of information in your short-term memory while solving through the corresponding questions. You need to read through multiple tabs of information and then either rely on your memory or refer back to the information provided again when you're solving through the related questions. It just takes a lot of time to do that, and it is easy to make a mistake if you miss registering a small piece of information such as a phrase somewhere. All of that said, one of the things that I think is working well for me is organizing the information I have picked up up after I'm done reading the tabs. So I will continue to do that. In terms of where I stand, I think I've been doing alright accuracy-wise on the MSR section. Across all the 3 MSR practice sets I have attempted, I seem to lose credit most often when I get 1 out of 3 sub-questions on a question wrong. Of course, I can make improvements in transferring information to my scratchpad correctly and structuring it well. The biggest thing that will help me is to have the mindset of not rushing through MSR questions. Based on my experience with them till now, it appears to me that the MSR question type is designed to be solved at a more deliberate pace. Having a patient mindset and what I like to call intellectual persistence should help me get through these more consistently. The next point I want to make is that given I'm currently taking 4 to 5 minutes per question for the MSR question type, it is obvious that I will have to make up for that lost time on other question types within the data insight section. So clearly I will have to choose particular question types where I want to be more aggressive on velocity. The intention is to ensure that overall I'm able to get through 20 questions within 45 minutes on the data insight section. I will figure out where those question types will be as I continue my data insights preparation in the coming days. Alright, so that is all I had on this MSR practice set. At this point, I have about 13 more MSR questions left in the online question bank, which I have never solved before. I will preserve them for my study session tomorrow and then solve through them as part of a single practice set. I plan to set aside 60 to 70 minutes to get through all of them in my study session tomorrow. For the rest of today, I want to spend some time getting through performance analysis on the data sufficiency practice sets that I had solved through over the last couple of days. Personally, I consider performance analysis to be of equal value as just solving through problems. So performance analysis is actually going to be my practice for today as far as the data sufficiency question type is concerned. Let's get into it. Alright, that was another 20 to 25 minutes spent in performance analysis of the second practice set of data sufficiency questions, which I had attempted yesterday, that is day 21 of my GMAT Prep. Because of an error I made in designing my data sufficiency practice sets, this practice set consisted of 26 questions. The questions were numbered 230, 234, 238 and so on up to question 330 from the GMAT official guide 2023-24. I had answered 24 of those 26 questions correctly across 2 attempts, so I was just reading through the solutions to those 24 problems today. I skipped questions 290 and 326 in particular. I will come back and reattempt those questions at a future date. I just have a couple quick learnings to call out. First, let's talk about question 234. Speaking in generalities, this question described a situation where a customer was purchasing X objects of type A and Y objects of type B. While solving this question, I was too quick to jump to the conclusion that all the X objects of type A had the same price. While reading through the solution to this problem though, I noticed that the official guide deliberately chooses not to make that assumption. I do agree that that is a more refined way of solving this problem. Thankfully, that did not affect the outcome of my solution, so I still answered the question right overall. But I do want to keep that nuance in mind for future questions, so that I'm able to identify situations where I might be making that incorrect assumption that might come back to bite me later. Outside of that, on several questions such as question number 236, I noticed that the GMAT official guide tends to approach solutions to data sufficiency questions by asking you to think of 2 ways on the extreme ends by which you can arrive at 2 different answers for the value that the question is interested in. That way you can tell that a statement is insufficient to arrive at a single possibility for a given value. That is a perfectly logical way to approach these problems. However, I don't think it is the most efficient approach. I approach data sufficiency problems slightly differently and I think my approach is more efficient and cleaner. That said, I do want to acknowledge the official guide solutioning approach and keep that in my back pocket because it might be useful for me at some point. Alright, so that is all for today's study session. Hit like, bell and subscribe for future updates. You can also click on the Ask Me Anything link in the video description if you have any questions for me. Otherwise, remember to get some rest in the middle of your GMAT prep sessions. I have been going at this pretty hard and I'm beginning to get tired for this week. I think I will take a little break tomorrow. I wish you the best for your GMAT prep and I will see you in the next video.